You are listening to the Cattle Call podcast. This is the place where computer-aided design and drafting meets humor and practicality, with a touch of business acumen thrown in for fun. Jim and Rocco, the owners of Zentech Consultants, the premier U.S. technology consulting firm for architecture, engineering, construction, and manufacturing, discuss the fascinating world of CAD with some humor and some honesty. The Cattle Call podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Cattle Call podcast with Jim and Rocco from Zentech Consultants. I am your utterly charming host, Jim, and with me is my partner.
It's Rocco, but utterly charming?
Utterly charming.
That would be me.
No. Hey, I'll have you know I am like Prince Friggin' Charming over here, all right? I'm the Jersey version of Prince Charming is all I'm saying. People love me. Many people are saying it's the... Sorry. I'm not going to go that.
Where's your wife when I need her?
I don't say that stuff when she's around. I want people knowing the truth about me. What are you, nuts? Never let your wives talk about you in public. That's just waiting for an embarrassment. But see, you see how mean he is to me, folks? And that's why, because he's mean to me, that's why I make him suffer through the engineering joke of the week. Rocco, you ready? It's that time again. Here we go. Ready? So an electrical engineer built his house entirely out of resistors. Do you know what his welcome mat said?
What?
It said, "Ohm, sweet Ohm." Come on. That's like the engineering version of a dad joke right there. That's like the worst ever. I love it, though. That's great stuff. Okay. All right. So what are we talking about today? Oh, I know what I want to talk about. So on today's show, I want to talk about the kingpin of the CAD world, the Mac Daddy, the big pimpin' with the BDE. And that's big drafting energy for Rocco with his dirty mind. It's the design system that has been top dog of the CAD hill for decades, AutoCAD. And whether or not it is still we'll call your one and only. And look, on today's show, I am not here to beat that system up. I just want to talk about whether or not you have viable alternatives out there on the market that you can use instead of AutoCAD. And I kind of want to try and focus today's show on two things, right? Number one, who's using AutoCAD and what other options there are for those people. So look, like I said, AutoCAD, I love AutoCAD. It's a very solid system. I have been working with it, in it, around it, teaching it, training it for almost 4 full decades now. Yes, that's how old I am. I'm getting there. And AutoCAD gets the job done, right? The thing is, I think, is that AutoCAD, it's the low end of the revenue pool for Autodesk, right? Whose real focus is on their vertical markets for, their much higher price tag items like, Revit and Civil 3D, et cetera. So consequently, AutoCAD itself, right? Just basic, what we call vanilla AutoCAD, it hasn't seen any serious feature upgrades in a really long time. And while that's happening, I think a lot of their smaller competitors have been actively developing and kind of flooding the basic 2D drafting world with some really impressive tools and features that those of us who are still dwelling in that Autodesk world may not have even heard of or imagined. Okay, so Rocco, let's start with the user base here today. Do you still talk to a lot of people who use just basic AutoCAD on a regular basis?
Oh yeah, I mean every day. It's I don't think it's going away by any means. And I hate to kind of stereotype, but it just seems like the majority of the older folks are using AutoCAD. That's not to say that that Revit and products like Revit and Civil 3D haven't taken strong hold. I mean, they continue to take hold in the market, but AutoCAD is still king. It's still all over the place.
Yeah, and like I said, we're going to talk about that today. But I find that even the folks who are using those verticals still pretty, regularly use AutoCAD as well. So I think depending on the type of work that you do and what industry you're in, it's possible you may be doing more 3D work than 2D drafting nowadays, right? And I think, like Rocco was saying, right, particularly when you get to, like, manufacturing and architecture, those industries in particular do a lot of 3D modeling. You got mechanical folks who are dealing in, SolidWorks and Inventor and Creo and similar products for modeling their parts and components. And then you got architects who are tied heavily into the, the BIM 3D tools, right? Like Revit or BIM 360 or AutoCAD or BricsCAD BIM. But yeah, almost all of them still deal with 2D CAD drafting at some level, even though that, their primary work is done in 3D. I know, most of the architects I talk with, they still use, 2D CAD for, real heavily for space planning and layout, right? It's just quicker and easy for them to lay out in that 2D mindset, sketching out plans. While, a lot of the manufacturing people still have a lot of legacy products, right? That were designed kind of pre 3D, right? Back in the day when 2D was the king. And they're not going to go back and redo all those designs that they're working in manufacturing off of and they have been building from those 2D plans for 20 years, just because it'll look cool in the new 3D system. For most of them, all right, most of these companies and industries, it means working in AutoCAD. That's what most of us work with, right? But it doesn't just have to be AutoCAD. There are also a lot of, smaller firms that still do their daily work in that vanilla AutoCAD environment. And I think a lot of people just say, oh, there are no other options, right? Even though, and Rocco gets this every day, there are just a lot of folks out there who are frustrated. We get it, right? We hear it all the time with the Autodesk's, annual fees, and we'll call it their despotic licensing requirements sometimes. There's a truth there, right? That the fees that Autodesk takes for your AutoCAD usage really angers people because that money doesn't really seem to go towards developing that system. Those funds are much more likely to go towards developing those big 3D verticals and their cloud-based products that are bigger revenue generators for Autodesk. And I think that angers a lot of people, right? I'm paying for something and not getting a benefit, right? And look, as business owners, Rocco and I get it, right? A company wants to generate the most profit it can and push the big ticket items to your customer base, right? The problem here is that AutoCAD users are paying a big chunk of the fees and seeing very little benefit. I mean, that to my mind, Rocco, that's almost like a government charging people crazy high taxes and then, refusing to provide basic services like healthcare to their citizens. I mean, crazy, right? Who would do such a thing, Rocco?
I don't know.
I don't know. All right, but so, putting aside my little personal political snarkiness here, do the fees and the licensing for AutoCAD, do they play a big part for, when you're talking with people who are looking for alternative CAD systems, or is it primarily that they're looking for better functionality, right? Is it pricing or functionality that's kind of driving those conversations?
I guess unfortunately it is pricing. It starts with that, right? I'm paying so much every year for AutoCAD and Autodesk products. It's getting more and more expensive with every year that goes on. Is there an alternative? And then when they start to look for alternatives, they realize that not only are there cheaper alternatives, but there are better alternatives out there. And some of these alternatives are just like AutoCAD, so that's what I see. It starts with the pricing realization, and then it ends with the functionality differences.
Hey, no surprise, like I say, money makes the world go around, right? That's always where those conversations are going to start, I think. So I mean, looking at all of these issues and frustrations that people have with Autodesk, right? You kind of have to ask, why are so many of us still using AutoCAD? And I think a lot of it has to do with fear. I think, there's a fear of, losing all the things that you spent year developing in terms of standards and so on. There's fear that a different CAD system is going to present a huge learning curve for your staff. There's fear that a new system could possibly cause conflicts with your clients and design partners you have to work with because they're using AutoCAD. And I think just because everyone in the design world, we've been using AutoCAD for so long now that there is a reluctance to kind of be the first horse out of the gate to lead the way to a new horizon of better tools and workflows. And look, folks, I mean, I get that. I do. I understand. I get the risk, right? But, fortune, like they say, right? Fortune favors the bold. And the first people to adopt better technologies are the ones who always reap the most rewards. Look, I think there's a general sense of comfort associated with the Autodesk name, right? Kind of the feeling that, like, if everybody knows it and everybody uses it, it gives you that warm, fuzzy feeling, right? That all the big problems and concerns have already been ironed out by someone else. And if there's a problem, you have a long list of resources and people that you can go to for help, where newer, smaller CAD systems don't have that giant reputation. So there's that concern, right, that you could get left hanging if there are any issues, or you might have the fear that the smaller company could just disappear in a few years. Then what? Right? And look, those are legitimate concerns. But I think the key is to make sure that the tools you're looking to move to are cross-compatible with the AutoCAD platform, right? So that a lot of those concerns are laid to rest. I mean, what I mean by that is, go out and look for systems that work similarly to and then in the same file format as AutoCAD, but that are offering you better pricing and better tools. That way, if the absolute worst should happen, you can always move back to where you started if you needed to, with little or no loss in productivity. So Rocco, right? We represent and sell BricsCAD, right? Which we talk about. We'll talk more about on the show. But in general, all right, what is the name recognition? I think that's a lot of it, right? So, like I said, you get tools like BricsCAD and other CAD systems we're going to talk about here today versus AutoCAD. Do you find when you go and talk to people that they even know what the names of these other systems are when you're talking to them?
It depends. Like, we've been working with BricsCAD for a couple of years now, right? So, those who follow Zentech and know what we're doing have seen it. So,
were you saying that we annoy people enough that now they know BricsCAD? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'll leave that up to the audience to tell us. So I think at some level the name is getting out there. Does everybody know about it? No, I mean, a lot of people have their heads down and doing what they do every day and trying to, stay ahead of the tidal wave, but BricsCAD is certainly gaining recognition status out there. That's for sure.
Yeah. So it just, and look, I'll sum it up like this on this half of the show. It's crazy to me that so many of us out there are still working in that 2D drafting space, but that AutoCAD has just given us the limited compatibility updates that they have over the last decade. Look, research and the numbers out there show that almost 80% of designers still use 2D CAD on a regular basis or a semi-regular basis. But I don't think that it gets the attention that it needs, because CAD developers are often looking at bigger, higher profit systems and trying to drive the market that way for their own financial bottom line. And that's kind of why in the next half of the show, I want to get into what the actual 2D CAD options there are out there that are available for you guys. All right, so stand by, folks. We'll be back in just a minute with more of the Cattle Call Podcast. All right, everybody. Today's episode of the Cattle Call Podcast is brought to you by Zentech Consultants. That's Rocco and I. We're bringing ourselves to you. Aren't we nice? So we wanted to talk to you guys today about some of the things that we offer at Zentech Consultants. In particular, we wanted to talk to you today about our offerings around developing and upgrading your CAD standards. We are here to help you guys with all of your CAD standard needs, from ongoing drafting and design support to block and library development, full CAD standards development, right, CAD version upgrades, really whatever it is that you guys need when it comes to developing, implementing, and tweaking your current CAD standards. Or like I said, if you don't have any yet, we can help you build them from scratch. So Rocco, why don't you tell all the good folks how they can reach out to us and start that conversation?
Yeah, there's a lot of information, people, on our website, zentechconsultants.net. That's Zentek consultants.net. Or you can give us a call, 866-824-4459, or even drop us an email, sales@zentechconsultants.net.
Ooh, nice. CAD standards from Zentech Consultants. You're listening to the Cattle Call Podcast. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Cattle Call Podcast. We're talking about AutoCAD 2D drafting alternatives today, and I want to get into talking about some of the other packages that you can look into to kind of get away from the limitations that we discussed around AutoCAD in the top half of the show. And I'm going to start off with a big system that I hear a lot of, particularly small design houses talk about, and it's called FreeCAD. One word. And it's a nice little CAD system. Though honestly, I really don't think it works well enough for regular corporate use. Its big draw is, of course, that it's free. And it says so right in the name, FreeCAD. The negatives are that it's, freeware. That's kind of, community supported and developed. So it doesn't always get the development focus that it needs because, nobody's being paid to do that. You get a lot of, hobbyists and tech geeks like myself who just like to tinker with the new tools. But I don't think there's anything there that's really focused on production, that's been tested or extensively vetted out. Look, at the end of the day, right? FreeCAD is a really nice hobbyist drafting tool if you're doing your basic, simple 2D drafting plans, and that's about it. Perfectly functional, right? But I will say that one thing that I've seen it doing, and again, it's part of the industry focus, right? It's the developers and the geeks like me who like to play with things. I think we're putting too big of a focus on, cool 3D modeling features, right? For building specialty parts. Right, which is great and it's fun to play with, but like I said, from a construction-based design industry standpoint, that's not really where you want to go. And I don't think that those tools are going to help most of the people we're talking to or we're talking about here today to build their business. Look, I think it's great. You can use FreeCAD if you're, a Linux user who wants to model out a new clay garden gnome for your planting bed. It's fantastic. You can absolutely do those things very easily. It's got some really fun tools for that, but I don't think that it is going to suffice for an architectural firm. All right. So Rocco, have you ever known any of our clients to work with FreeCAD or any other completely true free CAD systems?
Free what?
Free what? Free Willy?
No, I can't even say that I've heard of FreeCAD, honestly. And no, I mean, it's, I think if you're, I hate to say it this way, but I mean, if you're a serious player, you're not using a CAD system like that. It's just not something I run across.
Yeah, no, like I said, free is, like I said, great for hobbyists, never going to work in a business environment. So, I think a much better known name in this area is IntelliCAD, right? Which over the years I've dealt with, worked on, and it was a great system. It was kind of an offshoot originally of AutoCAD, and they went through a whole lot of legal interfaces and fights with Autodesk over use of the drawing files, and they kind of were a big key in getting that Open Drawing Alliance kind of open and set up and working and opening up the CAD space. And for a while, right, IntelliCAD was a for-profit, purchasable, independent CAD system, but it's kind of been beat out of business in that respect, and they have shifted what they are, and it's kind of weird. I know I've talked about IntelliCAD before on the show, and I went back just to kind of take a look, and it's a completely different beast now. Nowadays, IntelliCAD it's a technology consortium. Right, and it gives you sign up, you become a member of the consortium, and then you get access to the core CAD functionality. Right? In other words, if you join up, you can actually take that core functionality and use it for coding to develop your own CAD system. And essentially, it's really become a software development tool with, looking at it, just absolutely crazy high access prices. And and it really isn't for most of us on this show anymore. I have actually, I was taking a look at, and I can see that there are a couple of pretty large firms who are using this new format of IntelliCAD to develop very specific drafting tools for their own in-house use, right? Big companies who have their own coders on staff. I can even see there are a few small software developers who are kind of using IntelliCAD as a source for their own verticals. I'm seeing it particularly in people who are developing or trying to develop their own industry specific tools for things like HVAC ductwork and piping and electrical work for specific CAD tools for those industries. But overall, in IntelliCAD, just looking at it, it doesn't seem like it's really a viable 2D CAD alternative, even though I have called it such on earlier podcasts. But I think even here, there's a problem, right? And I hate to browbeat this, right? But the open source nature of some of these free or a system like IntelliCAD, they're open source, right? And I think that those systems, it leads to limited development, right? Because there's no real central management, right, to focus the development process towards meeting client needs. You've got individual users who have very specific needs for their own stuff who are doing the development and then sharing it with the community. And it's nice. It's a great, democratization of, the systems, but I think you lose a lot of that focus that you get when you've got, the free market kind of driving towards what's the biggest necessity for most of us. So Rocco, as far as have you seen anyone still actively working with IntelliCAD products in recent years?
Yeah, I do run into it a little bit more often, not that often, but like you say, it's I'm just thinking through like, the scenarios where I see it more is around some of the HVAC firms. But it's almost like they're kind of like an island onto their own, which is kind of interesting, but not that often. But I do bump into them a little bit, certainly more often than a FreeCAD type of product.
Yeah, and I think your point is a valid one, right? You kind of we're talking about why don't people want to move from AutoCAD? Well, they don't want to be an island onto themselves. You know what I mean? Locked into, we use this and we can't share this data with anybody else. In the modern design world, I don't think that works real well. And I think, for most of us, right, we need to move towards a more commercially focused system, right, to be effective in the design world. And one tool that gets some good press, and I actually like it, I think it's a very solid system, is TurboCAD. It can work very, very well for a smaller design firm, a small to medium size. It has really nice modern tools, some of which you're not going to find in AutoCAD. They actually have some better tools than AutoCAD. So yeah, it's definitely worth looking at. I think that TurboCAD it triggers a few of the alarm bells on the, what we were talking about in the first half of the show on, the learning curve and the compatibility side of things. Look, for starters, right, TurboCAD doesn't work natively in the DWG, the standard, drawing format we're all used to. Though I will be fair and say it does a very nice job. It has a manual import and export process for it. So it can, right? It's just not its native standard. And I think there's also a much bigger learning curve in that it's kind of they built their own system from the ground up. So there is a big difference in the tools and the features from what an AutoCAD user would know, right? So you kind of have to relearn your CAD system, which I think is a big stumbling block for people who are thinking about making that change. And I will also say I think that TurboCAD's kind of broken their structure down into too many modules. They have just dozens of industry and trade specific tools, right? Which I think can be confusing in terms of licensing and choices of what do I need, what do I not need, where's the overlap, what am I doubling up on. And then, like I said, while I think that from a base CAD and a drafting and functionality standpoint, TurboCAD's a really good system. I think that it suffers from basically having ticked off just about every checkbox on the the I'm afraid to leave AutoCAD checklist. I also think that they are also, like most people are here, they're following along in Autodesk's wake. Right? And I think they're moving too deeply into the 3D space. They've got a lot of new 3D offerings at TurboCAD at the expense of their operational 2D CAD. I think there are just too many of these alternative CAD systems out there that buy the Autodesk hype of all 3D all the time. Like I said earlier, right? That's where Autodesk wants you because that's where the money is. But most of us don't work and can't work effectively that way most of the time. So most companies aren't there. And honestly, I don't think that most of them ever will be all 3D all the time. 2D is not going away. And I think that Autodesk can get away with a lot of this based on their size alone, because they're going to give you the AutoCAD as part of their essential or their bundled packages. So it's worth it, But I think that smaller systems like TurboCAD and some of the others are missing the mark when they're trying to compete head to head with the 3D juggernaut in their preferred space. That's not the place you want to go. Look, if you're going to fight Mike Tyson, fight him in a dark alley with a lead pipe. Don't get in the boxing ring. You're going to lose that match. So Rocco, let me ask you a simple question, right? We hit this all the time on the podcast. I've asked you a bunch of times, but what is kind of the ratio of 2D to 3D CAD users that you see when you're dealing with clients?
I almost, if it's hard to put a number on it, but I'd say that it's almost 50-50, honestly.
Okay.
If not 60-40, with more people using 2D and versus 3D. What do you think?
I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think, that about 50% of the companies hold 3D licenses. But like I was saying earlier, I think, dealing with them on the technical side, I find that, even the companies who do 3D regularly still use 2D regularly. Oh, yeah. There's it's not just like, hey, half use 2D only, half use 3D only. It's half use 2D only. The other half uses, 3D 50% of the time and 2D. Right? So in that case, if you want to do the math that way, it's more like 75 still dealing with 2D at some level. It's a big thing that people are still working with from what I see. All right. So look, as I'm sure, our listeners were expecting, right? Since we talk about it here all the time on the show, and I always note that Zentech is a BricsCAD partner. My most recommended CAD product for the 2D world is always BricsCAD. And I know what you guys out there listening are thinking, right? But honestly, that assessment isn't because we sell BricsCAD. The truth is we sell BricsCAD because I made that assessment. We worked with BricsCAD before we became resellers, and that's why we kind of got on board with that. BricsCAD is, I think, the most familiar way for users to move off of AutoCAD because it works, number one, with the same native DWG format, and almost all, and I mean all, of its tools and features and processes are identical to AutoCAD. Same location on screen, same name, same commands, whatever. All right, most AutoCAD users can just sit down at a BricsCAD station and go to work with no training at all. They will be productive. That's how easy it is to make that change. And it also means, right, because they're working in that same format, it means that files pass back and forth between AutoCAD and BricsCAD with no type of import or export or translation required, right? They're 100% compatible because they both use the same Open DWG Alliance file format. And from a CAD standpoint, an actual drafting and design standpoint, I'll tell you without question, BricsCAD is just a plain better system than AutoCAD. BricsCAD has tools and features and drafting aids that are going to have a massively positive impact on your daily work that it seems like AutoCAD just hasn't even dreamed about. And look, I will say this, you're not going to get into them today, but if you haven't seen some of these tools that I'm talking about here, just hit the ZenTech website or our YouTube channel. We have tons of demo videos for you. It'll blow your mind when you see what you can do here. Now, look, I'll be fair and say that there are there's some setup on the CAD management side that you're going to have to undertake, primarily in terms of repathing and copying files to new locations when you move to BricsCAD, right? It's not a just plug and play. But on the CAD management, and if you do all that in advance, right, get the one super user to do that for you, then your end users are really on a daily basis, they're never even going to notice the difference. Most everything that you have in AutoCAD today, right? Your templates, your plot styles, your block libraries, your list tools, your layer lists, layer states, whatever it is you work with, all of those port right into BricsCAD without any change or update. Just use the same ones. Honestly, it is the easiest transition, that you are likely to find. And I just feel that you get way better tools for a real modern 2D drafting environment. Now that's the benefit to BricsCAD from the tech side that I work with. From the business side, BricsCAD offers both better licensing and better pricing options to go along with that improved tech. And I'm going to make Rocco talk for a while here instead of him sitting there just answering my questions. And he's going to give us the full rundown on the license structure and the cost benefits for BricsCAD. So Rocco, what is it? What's the business case that people should know about with BricsCAD?
Yeah, well, BricsCAD is sold either as annual licenses or perpetual licenses, multi-user or single-user licenses. A lot of people still wish that Autodesk offered one-time perpetual licenses, but I honestly think that the market as a whole, put CAD aside. I mean, if you think about some of the other software that you use, even Bluebeam now is moving towards an annual license structure. So I think as a general society thing, you get used to paying those annual fees. Is it frustrating at some level? Sure. I mean, this is a whole other discussion, right? But my point is that you can get BricsCAD as either annual licenses or perpetual licenses, multi-user or single user. And from a cost standpoint, there's a big difference, when you compare AutoCAD versus BricsCAD. You can get a single user annual license of BricsCAD for $677, or a perpetual single user license for $1265. You can get a multi-user license of BricsCAD, an annual license for just over $1,000, and a perpetual license for just under $1,900. So those of you who are paying the AutoCAD fees, you know what you're putting out, and just compare these costs. And again, it's not just about costs. Compare the functionality. Like Jim said, there's, we offer tons of videos. We're always doing webinars, and we'd be happy to set up a demo for you on BricsCAD, a live demo, and talk through it all. So hit up our website at zentechconsultants.net, and you could even download a 30-day trial. I mean, I hear all the time, people tell me this, when they get in it, this is AutoCAD. This is just like AutoCAD. So their learning curve is minimal. So those are the points from the business perspective.
There you go. See? Look at that. And you say I talk all the time and don't give you a chance to put out your sales stuff. See?
Oh, thank you. You're so kind.
I am kind. All right, folks, there you have it, right? So look, AutoCAD, it isn't your only drafting option. There are plenty of other CAD systems out there, even ones we didn't get to cover today. And you should look into all of them. I guess what I want you guys to take away from today's show is don't let fear of change keep you locked into old, slow, frustrating processes and contracts. That's a downward spiral of stagnation that can kill your company and our industry and end us all up on the unemployment line. And I'm not rich like Rocco, so please don't make me have to go out and interview for a new job. All right, folks, we will get out of here, and we will catch you next time on the Cattle Call Podcast. All right, everybody, today's Cattle Call was brought to you courtesy of Zentech Consultants. That's Rocco and I. Zentech Consultants works with design and manufacturing firms to help our clients purchase and implement the software that they need in these complex industries. We provide a single point of contact for clients to buy, develop, and learn the most vital software systems for your specific needs. Zentech strives to be your trusted technology partner from your initial needs all the way through long-term support and training for your entire staff. So Rocco, why don't you tell them how to reach out to Zentech?
All right, yeah, you can reach out to us through zentechconsultants.net. You can email us at sales@zentechconsultants.net, or you can even call us 866-824-4459.
Excellent. We look forward to hearing from y'all.